Good afternoon, hello, my name is Daniel, this is the TriathlonDan YouTube channel, and today's video is an injury update. I have delayed this for as long as possible because I wanted to get as much update as I could for you and not just make a video every 5 minutes when I have any small development in an injury. I really don't want to be making videos about this sort of thing. I'd much rather be telling you about my new massive FTP, but I haven't got one and I have got an injury, so we'll work with what we've got. Right, for those who haven't been following along, 9 weeks ago, I clashed hands with somebody in the pool, and then after that, I had some wrist pain and it got worse and worse for 3 weeks, to the point where I then went to A&E. Had an x-ray, A&E said, you fractured your scaphoid. I had like a half cast put on. I thought my year was over, etc. 2 weeks later, went back to the fracture clinic and they re-x-rayed it and said, no, you haven't got a fracture there. Put a brace on and get on with it, and in a few weeks you'll be fine. A few weeks later, went back, reassessed it. This was about 6-7 weeks in, and they still said, yep, you've definitely not got a fracture there, but my wrist was still bad. And at that point, I was given a couple of options. It was, we're going to refer you for an MRI scan, continue with life as normal. You don't need to wear a brace. There's no reason why we think you should wear anything on your wrist. Okay. It wasn't good after that. I had to go back to wearing a brace. I went away to Mallorca for a week, got food poisoning, rode my bike a little bit, came back and got a private MRI scan because it wasn't looking like I was going to get an MRI on the NHS anytime soon. My third private MRI scan of the year so far. Please don't feel sorry for me, it's just one of those things. MRI scan results came back, and that is where we are today. This is the new bit. I got the MRI results, I've taken them to the hospital, I've been to the hospital and had a procedure, and this is the update. But there was a bit of a thing that happened, which I'm going to share with you now. So I got the MRI results, and thank you very much to my physio friends. You know who you are for helping me interpret that and giving me the relevant advice. I also sent that to the fracture clinic because I told them that I was going to go and get a private MRI. And they said, great, the best way for you to do that is tell us that you're doing it, so we take you off the waiting list for the NHS one, frees up space for somebody else, and also we can prepare to deal with the next steps from that when it comes in. Perfect. I sent the report on a Wednesday morning, and I was on the train on the way to London for a day at work. 2 hours later, I had a phone call saying, can you come in today? And I was like, I can't, I'm in the office. What, is anything wrong? They said, no, nothing wrong, but we've just got a free appointment today. I was like, okay, fine. I went back the next week when they had the next available appointment. The diagnosis from the MRI is that there are not any fractures in any bone in my wrist, arm, hand as well, I think. There was no fractures. Brilliant, great to have that actually solidly confirmed. An MRI is a lot more reliable than an X-ray. X-rays are to be interpreted. I understand now why the A&E department and the fracture clinic said you've got a scaphoid fracture, because they believe there might be one, and their course of treatment is to act like you have got one, because that's the safest way. If you're like, oh, I don't think you have, and then you don't wear a brace, then the impact of that is that you could potentially displace a fracture or make it loads worse. So you're better to have like a back slab or a cast or a wrist brace unnecessarily than the other way. So I understand that. So back to the fracture clinic this week with that results. So the MRI results were that there was no fracture and that there was some tendon issues, or were some tendon issues. It is, I'm going to butcher how I pronounce it, it's called de Quervain's tendinitis. Basically, the tendon that runs from your thumb down your wrist. There's a couple that run within a sheath down your wrist, and they sometimes become inflamed, they sometimes become too big for the sheath that they're in. It's a bit like compartment syndrome, like sometimes you get like shin splints or calf or shin pain when you're running. It's a bit like that, and that was what the diagnosis was. So I went back to the hospital, and to be honest, I expected to see the fracture specialist and them to refer me to a physio and me to have to wait for all that rigmarole. That wasn't the case. They'd referred me to somebody internal who was a specialist in that regard. So when I went there, he was like able to pull my thumb down, and I was like, that definitely hurts. And he was sure that the MRI reflected my symptoms, pinpointed where the pain was on my wrist, and talked me through the possible treatments. Now, when anything happens to you, I don't know about you, but become a bit of an internet doctor. Try and put faith in the professionals as well. But you got Google, haven't you? So you want to find out what's wrong with you and how you treat it. So I already knew, like, I can either have a steroid injection or I can have an operation on it where they sort of cut the sheath. Like, I knew those are the possible outcomes. And he talked me through all that. And he sort of said, like, the steroid injection should sort it based on what I've seen and based on my assessment of you today. So I thought, okay, I'm gonna have to come back for another appointment. He's like, I can do it now. I was like, brilliant, absolutely brilliant, awesome. I was like, okay. But that led me to my problem. I am not the best with needles, and I would say not very good at all with needles, actually. I was always the kid at school that fainted or was sick or, just generally hated needles. I don't know whether it is specifically needles, because I have had similar symptoms when I've just been in a hospital. Now, for those that have watched this channel for a really long time, a few years ago, I was a retained firefighter for 2 years, and you see some stuff in that line of work, right? So you see blood and other things, and I was always absolutely fine doing that. Of course, I didn't like it, but I never fainted or never unwell. It's just when it's myself, like I just can't deal with it. I remember once I put my hand in a bag and there was a shaving razor in it, and I cut my finger, and I had to like lay down on the bathroom floor, my hand in the sink, because I was like fainting. Anyway, so I gave the doctor this whole speech about how I'm not very good with needles. He said, "Do you want to lie down?" I said, no, I'll just stay sat down. And the nurse came in as well, because there were 2 people doing it. And I went to start telling her the same thing. And as I was saying the words, I don't react well to needles, sometimes lightheaded and so on, I could feel my head spinning. And I'm like, oh God, I don't need to do this. And she was like, don't worry about it, just don't look. I thought, perfect. And then he started doing it, and he's doing it because it's like a sharp scratch. And I wasn't looking, and the nurse said, and it's funny looking back on it, she said, yeah, definitely don't look now. I was like, oh, this makes me feel even worse. It took about 30 seconds, and then he said, right, all done. I thought, brilliant. And I looked down, and there was a little tiny spot of blood on my wrist, and that was just like enough to like tip me over the edge. So I don't know. I mean, I sat there afterwards, and he talked me through that it should feel better almost immediately. It didn't really, but within a few hours it did. This is a traumatic bit though. So I sat talking to them for 5 or 10 minutes. I knew I needed to come round. You put a plaster on it. I felt loads better. So thank you very much. See you later. Got up, felt fine. I must have got 3 steps down the corridor. The next thing I know, I was like laid in a pile of chairs on the floor. I'd obviously just fainted halfway down the corridor. I grazed my right shin somehow on the way down. There was a different nurse who was like next to me as I like came round, and she didn't know where I'd come from. She was like, where have you come from? What treatment have you had? And then obviously I couldn't really talk properly, and I then got like half carried and walked back to a bed and had to lie down for 10 minutes with a glass of water. So not my finest hour. I really do not like injections, but it was a necessary evil. Now, what's happened since then? Right, the doctor said I don't need to wear a wrist brace, so I didn't. I did wear one that evening going for a ride, but since then I took it off. I'm now 4 days after that, and I've had some pain, nowhere near as bad, but definitely in the night when I wake up and I've like got my wrist at a funny angle. And I rode on turbo this morning, and I could feel wrist pain while I was riding. So what I'm doing now is I'm just going to wear a brace like at night, and if I'm going to ride a bike is my current plan. I'm going to play it by ear. Based on the guidance that I got there and what I've read, it can take 10 days to 2 weeks for the full effects of the steroid injection to like benefit me. So I'm going to give it some time. As I say, I'm only now 4 days in, but I'm really hopeful that that could resolve it. Now, there is a possibility. There's like 10-20% chance that it will need operating on, but even if it does, that's a minor operation, and it's like 6 weeks recovery time. So in terms of me doing the things I want to do this year, that doesn't really stop me doing those things. It does stop me swimming for the time being, but I was never very good at swimming anyway, so it doesn't take me very long to get back to where I was. I can ride a bike with a brace at the very worst. I can run, so I'm so happy to be able to do that. I'm so happy there's not a fracture, and yeah, it just feels so good having an actual solid diagnosis, solid treatment, and a solid plan. So thank you to all those who nudged me in the direction of getting an MRI scan. My 3rd private one of the year. Please don't feel sorry for me. It's just been a bit of a bad run of luck, but I'm on the fence about like announcing like, right, what am I doing later this year? As soon as I get swimming, I get a couple of weeks on my belt, I will be telling you all about it, because I don't feel confident enough yet to book flights. And when I book flights, I will tell you all about it. That's the only thing holding me back right now. And I think that is about it. I'm feeling generally very good. I'm a lot more mentally happy now that I know what it is, and I know it's not as serious as I first thought. My heart goes out to Magnus Ditlev, who does have a scaphoid fracture. And yeah, I'm ticking along. I'm taking each week as it comes. I'm building each week with Coach Chris and doing a bit more training each week, and feeling like this year is actually going to happen. So thank you very much for the ongoing support. Genuinely, this channel gives me so much motivation to train and to be healthier and to keep working towards my goals. And I often think if I didn't have this, maybe I'd have given up at some point, or I'd be a lot further back. I've got a lot of work to do. I'm about 12 kilos heavier than I was this time last year. I'm nowhere near as fit, but let's do it. Thank you very much for watching. Hit like and subscribe and all that jazz. I hope you're well, hope your training's going well, and I'll see you tomorrow at 1 o'clock for some almost triathlon training.